Hey, welcome to Searchlights at Home. I'm so glad you could join me. Just like last time, I've got a list of things for you to go and collect, and I'm going to give you a minute to go and get them all now. So we're going to start with a little bit of a recap today, and we're going to recap the last two Bible stories that we've done. But to make it a bit more challenging, I am going to set a 15-second time limit. So I'll go first and I'll recap the whole of the two stories in 15 seconds, if I can, and then it will be your turn. Are you ready for this? Let's go.
6 days before Good Friday, Jesus was having dinner. A woman came in with an expensive jar of perfume. She broke it and poured it on his head to show her love for Jesus. One day before Good Friday, the disciples got everything ready for the Passover in an upstairs room. Jesus told the disciples one of them would betray him. He broke bread and gave it to them and said, "This is my body." He passed around a cup of wine and said, "This is the blood of the covenant which is poured out for many."
I think I just about squeezed it all in there, didn't I? So now it's your turn. So you are going to have 15 seconds to see if you can recap the whole of our last two Bible stories. On your marks, get set, go. Now today we are thinking about goodies and about baddies. So for our quiz today, I have got some pictures of different people that I think you might recognise. Now while we've been stuck at home, I have watched quite a lot of films, and maybe you have too. So hopefully you'll recognise these different characters, and I want you, as we see the pictures, to put your thumbs up or thumbs down for whether they're a goodie or a baddie. So if they're a goodie, thumbs up, obviously. If they're a baddie, then it'll be thumbs down, and we'll see how many you can get out of 12. Baddie. Goodie. 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 Baddie. Goodie. Baddie. Goodie. Baddie. Goodie. Goodie. Baddie. Well done! How many did you get out of 12? That is brilliant. Now it's time for our Bible story. But before we dig into the story, I want to introduce you to some of the characters. And what I want you to do is, as I tell the story, I want you to listen out for what those characters get up to. And I'd like you to decide, do you think each character is a goodie or a baddie?
So first of all, meet Jesus' followers. Meet Judas. Meet the religious leaders. Meet Pilate, the Roman governor. Meet a man called Barabbas. and meet Jesus himself. Are these guys goodies or baddies? Gethsemane, which was a garden. Jesus told Peter, James and John to come with him. Then Jesus began to be very sad and troubled. He said to them, I am full of sorrow. My heart is breaking with sadness. Stay here and watch. Jesus walked a little further away from them. Then he fell on the ground and prayed. He prayed, Abba, Father, you can do all things. Let me not have this cup of suffering, but do what you want, not what I want. Then Jesus went back to his followers. He found them asleep. He said to Peter, Peter, why are you sleeping? Couldn't you stay awake with me for 1 hour? Stay awake and pray that you will not be tempted. Again, Jesus went away and prayed the same thing. Then he went back to the followers, and again he found them asleep because their eyes were very heavy. They didn't know what to say to Jesus. After Jesus prayed a third time, he went back to his followers. He said to them, You are still sleeping and resting. That's enough. The time has come for the Son of Man to be given to sinful people. Get up, we must go. Here comes the man who has turned against me. While Jesus was still speaking, Judas came up. He was one of the 12 disciples. He had many people with him who'd been sent by the religious leaders, and they all had swords and clubs. Judas had planned a signal for them. He had said, The man I kiss is Jesus. Arrest him and lead him away. So Judas went to Jesus and said, Teacher, and kissed him. Then the men grabbed Jesus and arrested him. Jesus said, You came to get me with swords and clubs as if I were a criminal. Every day I was with you teaching in the temple. You didn't arrest me there. But all these things have happened to make the scriptures come true. Then all of Jesus' followers left him and ran away. The people who arrested Jesus led him to the house of the high priest. All the religious leaders were gathered there. They tried to find something that Jesus had done wrong so they could kill him. But they could find no proof against him. Many people came and told lies about him, but they all said different things. None of the lies matched up. Then some men stood up and lied about Jesus. They said, We heard this man say, I'll destroy this temple that men made, and 3 days later I'll build another temple, a temple not made by men. But even the things these men said did not agree. Then the high priest stood before them and said to Jesus, Aren't you going to answer the charges these men bring against you? But Jesus said nothing. He did not answer. The high priest asked Jesus another question. Are you the Christ, the Son of God? Jesus answered, I am. And in the future you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right side of God, and you will see the Son of Man coming on clouds in the sky. When the high priest heard this, he was very angry. He tore his clothes and said, We don't need any more witnesses. You all heard him say these things against God. What do you think? They all said that Jesus was guilty and should be killed. Some of the people there spat at Jesus. They covered his eyes and hit him with their fists. They said, Prove that you're a prophet. Then the guards led Jesus away and beat him. Very early in the morning, the religious leaders decided what to do with Jesus. They tied him, led him away, and turned him over to Pilate, the Roman governor. Pilate asked Jesus, Are you the king of the Jews? Jesus answered, Yes, I am. The leading priests accused Jesus of many things. So Pilate said, You can see that these people are accusing you of many things. Why don't you answer? But Jesus still said nothing. Pilate was very surprised at this. Every year at the Passover time, the Roman governor would free one person from prison. He would free any person the people wanted him to free. And at that time there was a man named Barabbas in prison. He was a rebel and had committed murder during a riot. The crowd came to Pilate and asked him to free a prisoner, as he always did. Pilate asked them, Do you want me to free the king of the Jews? Pilate knew that the leading priests had given Jesus to him because they were jealous of him. and the leading priests had persuaded the people to ask Pilate to free Barabbas, not Jesus. Pilate asked the crowd again, "So what should I do with this man you call the King of the Jews?" They shouted, "Kill him on a cross." Pilate asked, "Why? What wrong has he done?" But they shouted louder and louder, "Kill him on a cross." Pilate wanted to please the crowd, so he freed Barabbas for them. And Pilate told the soldiers to beat Jesus with whips. Then he gave Jesus to the soldiers to be killed on a cross.
So, I wonder what you think of all the characters in that story, about whether they were goodies or baddies. Let's go through them. So first of all, there's Judas. Now he was the one who betrayed his friend Jesus to be killed. He is definitely a baddie, right? Then we had the religious leaders. Well, they lied about Jesus, didn't they? And they hated him, even though he hadn't done anything wrong. So I think they're probably baddies too. Then we have Pilate. He was the Roman governor. And did you notice he was a bit of a coward, really, wasn't he? He knew Jesus hadn't done anything wrong, but still he wanted to please the crowd. And so he just gave in to them and said that Jesus could be killed. And then we had the man who was a prisoner, Barabbas. Now, can you remember what he had done wrong while he was in prison? That's right, he was a murderer. And so I think he would definitely be on the baddie list. And then there's Jesus' followers. Now, they might not be as bad as the others, but they still weren't really great friends to Jesus, were they? When he really needed their help, when he was worried in the garden and praying, what did they do? Well, they fell asleep. And then when Jesus was arrested, all of his followers abandoned him. So not many goodies in this story, really, is there? In fact, I think there's only really one goodie in this story. I think that's Jesus. I think he's the only goodie or hero in this story. Because you see, the Bible tells us Jesus always did what was right. He always told the truth. He was always completely loving, and he never let his friends down. Jesus is a goodie. Now, what about us? Well, I expect most of us are quite good some of the time. We're quite good at telling the truth sometimes. We're quite good at being loving sometimes. But I reckon there's times when we're not quite so good at being good. And as we've talked about, we do all let God down, don't we? Sometimes we all sin. Now, if you can remember what sin means, then join in with me now. So sin is when we say to God, "Shove off, I'm in charge, not you." And so really, we are all more like the baddies in this story than we are like Jesus, aren't we? But the wonderful news of this story is that Jesus came to save baddies like us. At the end of the story, Jesus was led away to be killed on a cross, and the baddie Barabbas was set free. And that's because Jesus was a goodie who came to save baddies when he died on the cross that first Easter. I think it's time for us to do some craft. Now, I've actually got 2 crafts for you to have a go at today. The first one you'll find, which hopefully you've printed out, and that is a colouring sheet. Now, if you don't have a printer, then you can probably have a look at what's on the sheet, and you may well be able to draw it out yourself or have a go at drawing your own goodies and baddies. If you haven't been able to print the cube outline, then why not get an adult to have a go at drawing that for you? You don't need the pictures on it. You could just write down in each face of the cube, you could write the name of who the character is. If you've managed to print the printouts, then let's have a look at the cube craft. So you can see that I've already cut mine out, so you may want to pause the video and do that for yours now. When you've cut out your cube outline, what you're going to need to do is fold along all of the lines like this. And this is the slightly tricky bit. I reckon you're best off using some glue just to put some glue on the tabs and glue your cube together. But I don't actually have any glue, so I'm going with some sellotape. So let's tape that together now along the edges. You might need an adult to just give you a hand with this because it's a little bit tricky. Oh, I'm almost there. How are you doing? When you've finished gluing your cube together, you could write on the names of the different characters, just as a reminder. So we've got the followers, Jesus' followers. We have got Pilate. We've got Judas. We've got the religious leaders. We've got Barabbas. And we have got Jesus. Okay, well there we go. That's my cube done now. So when you finished, it should look something like this. And we're actually going to use that now for a game. And how the game works is you're going to need to get your counters or your pasta or your beads or whatever you found to use for the game. I don't actually have any of those, so I've decided to use some stuffed toys. So you can see I've got a big pile of stuffed toys here. Now you're going to need to give each player 3 lives, and they're going to be represented by your counters or your pasta or your beads, or for me it's going to be my stuffed toys, so I'll have 3 of those. So each player will need 3, and if you put whatever's left in the middle in a big pile. Now the youngest player is going to start, and they're going to take their dice and they're going to roll it. And whatever they roll, there'll be an instruction for them to follow. And these are going to be on the screen, but I'll just read them to you now. So if you roll a follower, then you do nothing. If you roll Judas, then you can take a life from the middle. If you roll Pilate, then you do nothing. If you roll the religious leaders, then you can take a life from every other player. If you roll Barabbas, then you can take a life from one other player. And if you roll Jesus, then you have to divide all your lives between the other players. Because we heard in our story, didn't we, that Jesus was a goodie, but he came to give his life away, to save people who are baddies. So those instructions are going to be up on the screen in a minute, so do have a go at that. If you'd like to send me some pictures of you playing the game, or some pictures of your colouring sheet, or anything like that, I would love to see them. My email address is on the screen now. And other than that, I'll say goodbye, and I will see you again next week. Bye!